a left and go into the cafeteria area, and there's also a water purifier. And if anyone else has any questions with the login, it's the local kind of icon, and then the password is password, and that's no capitals or anything. So without further ado, I think we're going to get started. This is Tony, our executive director of OMF, and he's going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, and just so you guys know, this isn't amplifying our voice. It's just for the stream. But in case any of you don't know where you are, this is the Open Media Foundation. We're a nonprofit organization. In many ways, we operate a little like a ad agency for the nonprofit sector and governments, producing videos, doing communication services, building websites for the nonprofit sector. There's a little flyer there for you. We work exclusively with nonprofits, and we were really excited this year to be in addition to the HandsOn Tech program, which is a nationwide program that Robbie and Jacob are going to tell you a little bit more about in a minute. So in addition to providing those services for nonprofits, we teach people how to do that themselves, how to be their own voice in the media, how to make their own media, make their own websites, make their own videos, and we provide the tools and resources that people need to have access to whatever they need to tell the highest quality stories about their work or their organization. So some of you may have seen the studios and some of the kids running around. I encourage you, if you have an interest afterwards, to just take a peek in the studio. There's about 20 kids from all around the Caribbean that are here today, all learning how to make media, and they're doing a live television show where they're sharing some of their perspectives. There's a lot of great stuff like that happening here, and membership programs and stuff that's also in your materials, so that nonprofits can have free, unlimited access to computers like these, but also cameras like the one I'm running around filming with today, the studios and that sort of thing, so that if your nonprofit doesn't have a strong multimedia presence, that you could afford to build one. So that's what the Open Media Foundation is here for. That's my short plug, and I'll give it back to Robbie and Jacob, who are going to tell you about HandsOn Tech. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. All right, so as mentioned, my name is Robbie Macbeth, and along with Jacob, we are the HandsOn Tech Vistas here at the Open Media Foundation. So I'm just going to give a little short presentation, just kind of explaining what we are, to give some context about what this training is and everything else. So the HandsOn Tech program, hold on. The goal is basically to increase the effective use of technology by the nonprofit sector. So we are an AmeriCorps program, and our goal is basically to have nonprofits do what they do better using technology. So mainly we get tech volunteers together with nonprofits, like the training today. So, sorry, just one second. So basically the process of the HandsOn Tech program, we gather skill-based volunteers, so volunteers in the Denver and Boulder community that have skills in technology, and we have them either give a nonprofit tech training or do a nonprofit tech deep dive. So the training that you're at right now is an example of that. 90 Octane is generously donating their time and their skills to kind of teach this class on Google Analytics and search engine optimization. And then the second part of our program is called the Nonprofit Tech Deep Dives. These are where nonprofit organizations apply to us to get basically free tech help on anything. So if you're building a new web migration, you're trying to launch a new web server or something, you would contact us, and we would kind of get skill-based volunteers who would want to donate their time to come in and kind of help get those projects started. We also do technology assessment plans as part of that. So if you're an organization and you're just thinking maybe we could use technology better, but we don't know how, you can apply to our program. We'll have someone come in, sort of assess how your organization is using technology, and then offer a plan based on that. Just a little bit of background about kind of what makes up the HandsOn Tech program. 3 organizations kind of came together to create this national program: the Points of Light Foundation, Google, and AmeriCorps Vista. So we are kind of as an AmeriCorps Vista program, our main mission is combating poverty in the Denver and Boulder area, local poverty. And so we do that basically through enabling nonprofits to better utilize technology and reach communities of lower income. Just a quick word about the AmeriCorps Vista program. There's kind of 3 main aspects to it that they've developed over time to combat poverty, and that is sustainability, community empowerment, and capacity building. Each one of those is kind of also a central program of our program. So we're not looking for just kind of like temporary solutions, but rather long-term, tools and resources for nonprofits, empowering the community to get together, share resources and everything else, and then building the capacity is the main one of our program, just seen through kind of a technology lens. So yeah, that's about the summary of the Hands-On Tech program. So yeah, definitely speak to Jacob and I afterwards if you want to talk or introduce ourselves. And I just want to once again emphasize the nonprofit tech deep dives. If your organization is interested, you can come talk to Jacob or myself after the program. Or you can visit our website. It has details. That's openmediafoundation.org/handsontech. Yeah, so without further ado, I think we'll get started with 90 Octane, if you guys are ready, and get this thing going. All right, if you have any questions.
Okay. Should we put it in slideshow mode, or is this little thing working?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so hi, I'm from 90 Octane and my little team over there. There's 4 of us here today. My name's Nikki, and I'm an account supervisor at 90 Octane, and I don't know if anyone's ever heard of us, but we're a marketing agency. We're located just off 16th and Glenarm by the 16th Street Mall downtown. And we are what we call a conversion-driven marketing agency, so 99% of the work that we do for our clients is all online. We work in 3 main verticals, so a lot of B2B work, some B2C, and then the other being nonprofit industry. So we're definitely excited to be here today. We have a lot of different sorts of experience working with nonprofits and helping them build their online presence and, specifically driving donations online. But we, definitely have a lot to learn in that industry as well. So we're happy to be here. My role is kind of overseeing all of our nonprofit clients that we work with, overall program strategy, and tying that strategy to, the best online programs for driving and helping you reach your goals. And a lot of times in those cases with a lot of nonprofits, it's generating donations. There could be a lot of other things like building email database or just brand awareness or, fundraising for a particular project. So that's kind of going into a little bit more detail. What we've put together today for the training is high-level overviews in 3 different areas. So like Robbie said, we're going to kick it off with an overview of SEO, so search engine optimization, and then go into PPC, so paid search, and then go into an overview of Google Analytics. And so we've kept all of these overviews pretty high level right now, so definitely let us know if, feel free to ask questions during it, but know that during the last hour of the session, during the workshop, we can definitely dive deeper and go into specifics, or if you know some of what we already presented, you can ask us other questions during that time. So I will be jumping in a little bit later on the presentation, but to start off the SEO section will be Leslie, and she is our director of search. So we do have a search dedicated team at the agency, and then we also have another member of our search to go through the paid section, and then Sam, who is our focuses on marketing technology or marketing automation and analytics. So they'll probably introduce themselves in a little more detail as they come up, but here we go.
Oh, yeah, I can we'll toggle between my notes, the clicker, and the microphone.
Yeah, and so we'll utilize 30 minutes for each section, then a break, and then we'll have some question and answer.
It would help if I hold it the right direction, huh? What am I pointing it to? Oh, okay. So like Nikki said, I'm Leslie Norgren, the search director at 90 Octane, and I have been there for 6.5 years, really primarily working in organic search and paid search. So kind of know the ins and outs of the industry, and as it's grown, really paid attention to the evolution of it. So really I'm going to start off with more of a high-level view of what organic search is, how to optimize for organic search, and as we go through it, we'll get more tactical into the actual elements and how to optimize those. So everybody, I'm sure, is familiar with going to a search engine, doing a query, and you know that you're going to see, at a basic level, organic listings as well as paid search listings. Ariana's going to, of course, talk a little bit more about paid search, and we'll go through some of the organic pieces. I'll get the clicker. So we'll start with talking about how search engines work. Every search engine has their own piece of code. Generally, it's called a spider or a robot. It's going to go out to a website. It's going to crawl what's on your site. It's going to look for information, try to navigate through it. And all of the information that it's obtaining, it takes back to its database, and it ranks that information. So if it's looking at your content, your images, your navigation, your sitemap, all of the details that you're providing it goes and ranks all of that information based on its own algorithm. And every search engine has a unique algorithm. And they've kind of given the stat that Google was expected to be releasing about 600 algorithm updates last year. So you think about it, it's a couple times a day that they're refreshing how they're ranking the information that's on your site. But really the basic practices, the foundation of it has stayed the same. There's been some changes and evolution to it, but for the most part, we're able to kind of apply a lot of foundational elements to a site as we optimize it and have those work in our favor. But once the search engine's ranked all that information, it then houses it in its database to know when you go and do a query on Google that it's going to return a certain number of results and rankings based on the content that it's crawled throughout sites. The search engines, when they get to your site, they're considering both on-site and off-site factors. So on-site factors are really anything that you control as kind of the owner of your website. Those are things like the page copy, the domain structure, the URLs, the navigation, even things like your footer or the privacy policy that you have in place. It's caching all of that information and thinking about how it's relevant to terms that people would go and type into a search engine. And it also considers off-site factors. So you might have some influence on those off-site factors, but think about that as anything that's taking place outside of your control. So those would be things like news story articles that are picked up, blogs where people are talking about your organization. It could even be your own social sites and what kind of signals you're providing the search engines there. So you do have influence over that, but you also have users that are providing content to the search engines as they're trying to understand the relationship of that site into kind of your overall site or domain. So now we'll go into a little bit more detail on those. There's what we consider both white hat and black hat tactics. White hat is kind of following the rules, thinking about everything as being kind of true and authentic. Black hat is spammy. So our recommendation is to always stay away from things that are spammy. Most of the time when you think of anything that's going to be a quick hit overnight wonder for you, it's probably going to be erring on the spammy side. White hat tactics tend to take a little bit longer to implement, maybe require some more resources, but ultimately are following those best practices and foundational elements that the search engines are looking for when they're crawling your site. We also always consider kind of that prioritization based on value and kind of overall impact. So ideally, the sweet spot is going to be up here with things that are white hat and going to be high value. And then we kind of move into this white hat, lower value tactics, and then kind of steer clear of this. So thinking about black hat, just some examples of that. You never want to have kind of invisible text on your page. So if you've kind of keyword stuffed things, or you've made white text on a white background in hopes that a search engine's not going to see it. Any kind of link buying where you're going out and trying to buy hundreds of links to your site. The search engines are looking for that kind of information to go back and say that you're not very authoritative or authentic. So really, why does SEO matter? Why do you put emphasis in optimizing your site? Why do you want to put resources to optimizing your site? Obviously, with SEO, there's long-term value. So it may take a little bit longer to be able to implement things or to actually see results within the search engines. But once you've put that effort there, it really maintains kind of its importance and is able to kind of go for the long term. It's definitely measurable as we get into talking about analytics. You're able to get a lot of information within Google Analytics on your organic traffic and the search behavior of those people and what they're looking for when they get to your site. It's definitely integrated with other tactics. So any other type of pushes you've got out there, say you've got press releases going out, or you've got maybe you're being interviewed by a local publication or a news station, a radio station. Thinking, how do you tie that and push that content on your site so that it's able to be crawled, indexed, and returned to someone searching? And it definitely builds credibility. If you think about your own search behaviors, and if you go to Google or Bing or Yahoo and you type something in, you're obviously trusting that in most cases what's being returned in the search results is going to be authoritative, is going to be relevant to your search, and is going to be in some cases important. And it definitely attracts traffic in all stages of a decision process. So if you think about someone who might be looking for volunteer opportunities, they're going to be finding your site. If you're looking at someone who might be looking to make a donation, they'll be there. If someone's looking for kind of services that your organization's providing, you're reaching those clients as well. At 90, I'll talk a little bit about our process, and then we'll start going into the actual optimization techniques. So we start every search engine optimization program with an actual research phase. So here we're going out, we're trying to understand the trends and the popularity. We look at tools like Google Trends, so google.com/trends, to see where keywords are trending. Do we see seasonality in keywords where people may have increased interest around holidays or back to school time frame? Like, when is it peaking that their interest is there? We look at tools. Another really beneficial one is called WooRank, so WOO rank.com. It gives some really great insights organically on how your page is being crawled and what kind of information is being accessible to the search engines. So we kind of look at a lot of that information, and then we pair it with where we've already talked with a client about their demographics or their personas or who their audiences are that they're looking to reach. So some of that's going to give us different insights. If you're looking to reach an elderly audience, they may not be as educated and as internet savvy as, say, maybe that younger demographic, the millennials, that type of thing. So once we've kind of done that whole research phase, we then look at what's the site actually look like. So we go through an audit. We'll be giving you all the different points that we look at kind of as a foundation for an audit on a site. But we really look at those on-site and off-site factors to see how are they looking. Have they met the foundational needs of the search engines? From there, we develop a keyword strategy. So it's thinking about all the keywords that someone would be looking for you would ideally want your site to return in the search engines. So definitely thinking about all the combinations, plurals, synonyms, even some of the negative match things, like what don't you want to come up for? In some cases, you might not want to be listed as free. So you think about how do you make sure that content's not included on your site. And then finally, we go through a full optimization strategy. So that's actually making modifications to the site's code and content and all the other great things to really help it rank better within the search engines. So we'll kind of now start going through each of the tactics that we look at when we're doing a website audit. So as I said, we really focus on kind of the most impactful pieces and then move down to the least impactful things. So we look at things like page copy. What's the content that's on the page? Is it keyword rich? We look at things like metadata. So that's going to be your title and description tags for each page of your site. We look at links. So who's linking to you? So that's one of those off-site pieces of thinking about how many organizations or websites or other sites out there are linking back to your site. We look at things like the domain name and URL structure. How is your folder structure for your URLs looking? We look at things like header tags. So you think about what's that main headline on each page of your site and how to optimize for that. And then things down to like even the footer of a website. So what information's in that footer? So we'll go through each of these in detail. The next few slides are going to be pretty copy heavy, but we'll talk through them. And these will be resources that you guys can have access to post today's session so that you're able to refer back to this once you're back in your office or your locations trying to think about how to update your sites. So for page copy, really when you think about kind of what are you providing a search engine to crawl as well as your user to be able to read and understand the information, you want it to be keyword rich but also context rich. So search engines definitely have the ability to understand the information as it relates to one another. So if we think on a a pretty basic level, maybe if your site is about Superman, you don't want to just say Superman 2,000 times on your website. You want to talk about all the other things in relation to it. So Kryptonite and Clark Kent and his glasses and his cape. And Google and Bing, they're able to then say, oh, this site really knows about Superman, versus if Nikki just has a site out there and she only references the name Superman on it, it's not as real or sincere. So Google's going to know that that site may not be as relevant to a user who really is looking for information on Superman. The other thing about page copy we'll throw out is we will, at the end of kind of this slide, give you a URL that you're able to go to, and we have some tips on additional content writing to be able to think about how to create compelling content for users that's something they'd want to read, as well as search engine friendlies to be able to help you optimize for the search engines. Metadata. So thinking about that, I had mentioned that a few slides ago, is your title and description tag. So each page on your site, most likely within your CMS, has the ability to include a title and description tag, and you want those to be unique. And the search engine algorithms do put emphasis on what's in that title tag. So when you do a search, kind of that blue underlined section of the organic listings is going to be the title, and then the description tag is going to be the 2 sentences that are underneath it, or 2 lines of content underneath it. The title tag can be keyword friendly. You don't want to overstuff it with keywords, but you want to say what's the page about, as well as thinking what's someone searching for that's going to find this page. And the description tag, you want it to be compelling. So that's not as relevant to the search engines, but it's definitely an opportunity to get them to click and entice someone to actually view your site. And then inbound linking. So this is a great opportunity to think about all the different offsite factors and places that are linking to you, and think about kind of that relationship component. So when you're out and you're networking, or you're working with other organizations, or other, even media outlets or press releases that you're issuing, think about how that all relates back to your site. So the more incoming links that your site has, the more authoritative the search engines find it. But the thing is you kind of walk that fine line of what's authentic. So you don't want to spam all these linking sites, but they're looking for kind of that organic growth of the number of links that are coming to your site. Oh, wrong way. The next thing to think about is your domain name and URL structure. So in most cases, your domain name is set. You're probably not going through a rebranding exercise, so it's probably not changing anytime soon. But what you can think about is your folder structure, or even how kind of those folder naming conventions are set up. So if someone's going deeper within your navigation and they're seeing a bunch of mumbo jumbo or session IDs where you don't need to have a session ID, or kind of letters and numbers being returned versus an actual keyword within that URL structure. The idea is that you would want as many keywords within your URL structure as possible without it being really lengthy. And again, I would reference like a Google Trends to see what's the most relevant way to look at it. If you've got kind of a donation form page and it's going to be, mysite.com/donation form, is it going to be donation form, or is it going to be charity donation form? Kind of what makes the most sense for your organization, and thinking about how you can update some of that information. The other thing is making sure that you're using hyphens rather than underscores. This is kind of a little bit older of a recommendation now, but definitely we still see a lot of clients coming to us where they have underscores in their URL strings, and making sure that you've got hyphens instead, because the search engine prefers those. The next thing would be looking at your navigations and internal linking structure. Here, when you think about your navigation bar at the top of your site, you want to make sure that it's text-based, or it's got an alt tag to represent it, because you want the search engine to be able to understand what's there. So if you only have images in your navigation bar, the search engine can't read an image. It just knows that there's an image there. So you need to make sure that it's either text-based, or that you've got an alt tag to represent what the actual text is within that image. And the other thing is thinking about the links that are in between kind of your pages. So oftentimes you've got a linking structure where you're linking from your home page to a sub page, and you don't want to do that with things like click here, because that doesn't mean anything to the search engine. It's going to think, okay, everyone says click here, but what are you really linking someone to? Is it going to be, here's our volunteer, apply to be a volunteer, or here's our hours or our location or directions, something that's a little more tangible to the search engines. Next would be header tags. So this would be kind of when you think about a newspaper, you always start with your headline, then you've got your subheadline going down in importance. Very much the same within a site. So most of these are going to be classified with a header tag notation, so an H1 and H2 and so forth. You want to think about what's the most important as far as keywords and include that within your H1 tag and then move on from there. The search engines really know that as being kind of the entry point or the main line of content that's on that web page and its importance of it. It's also important to think about social media integration. So definitely social signals play a high importance in how a search engine is ranking your site. So think about how do you make sure that you're optimizing your profile pages on your Facebook page or your YouTube channel or even your Twitter account. How do you even make sure that you're understanding the correlation of keywords that people would be looking for on your site within your posts or your tweets, so that it's just reinforcing kind of that general message and that kind of integration between the two tactics. And I think when we look at trends, this is going to be one of the things that continues to grow in emphasis with the search engines is what is social meaning and context to your overall site. Moving down into priority, the next thing would be anchor text. So kind of speaking back to that internal linking structure when you're linking from one page to the next, is looking at that anchor text. What's the hyperlink saying? Making sure that, it's not saying click here or learn more, but really is keyword rich and thinking about what is the page that it's linking to within that hyperlink. URL canonicalization. So this one's a little bit, I guess, probably deeper than we really need to get, but from an overview, if you do www.yoursite.com or .org versus just yoursite.org, you ideally want that to redirect and only serve one variation of your URL. You don't want it serving multiples. From a very basic piece, it could be viewed as duplicate content to a search engine, and they don't like to see things numerous times within search. So ideally, you'd have a server-side 301 redirect so that you only have one variation of your site serving. So it would be your www.site.org. And we can definitely talk through that probably in the workshop in a little more detail in looking at some of your sites and how that's redirecting. The next thing is alt tags. So as I mentioned, search engines aren't able to understand what's in an image. So you want to make sure that you're giving it an alt tag to be able to represent what's in it, but also know that that's definitely helpful for those that are visually impaired and the readers that are providing them context to what's being displayed on the page. So it's simply giving some details about the image to the search engine as well as those readers. And then one of the other things is footers. So making sure that you've got some of those common elements, like if you have an HTML sitemap, which hopefully you all do, that's included within your footer. A physical address is especially important when you're a local organization because you want to have, again, that content of the search engine understanding where are you located and being able to pull that and extract it into other information that it's serving. So oftentimes you'll see things like Google Maps appearing in search engine results. You'll see deeper details within a search carousel, kind of that knowledge graph piece that's loading on the right-hand side of a search engine results page. Making sure that your phone number's listed there, thinking about a privacy policy as well as terms and conditions. So the search engines want to make sure that they're keeping privacy in mind for the people that are headed to your site, and it is one of the things that's kind of on their checklist of does this site have this information. So then best practices for metadata, as I mentioned, the title is the most important thing here. We recommend kind of sticking to a max of 65 characters. Google's able to display up to 70 characters, including spaces, but Bing and Yahoo are able to display a few less than Google. So kind of the common denominator there is to stick to less than 65. As our best practice as an agency, we look even going a little bit less at 60 characters, and we try to include 2 keywords within each title tag. So if the organization that we're working with is providing housing for low-income families, we make sure that we've got housing and low-income related terms within our title tag. Description tags, generally we say that the max you want in there is about 160 characters. We tend to err on the side of caution with about 140 to 145, only because we generally see stronger organic click-through rates when we're looking at data for those that have a little bit shorter of characters. And here we're looking at 3 to 5 keywords within the description tag. And it's not necessarily that the search engines are understanding that, but if the keyword is the same as someone querying it, it's going to return as bold within the description, so it'll call more appeal to your actual result within the search engine result page. And then with alt tags, we generally say to have no more than 2 to 3 keywords per alt tag, definitely keeping in mind that its ideal purpose is to provide data when people aren't able to view the image, but still a good opportunity to provide the search engine some context of what's there. And then header tags, so those H1 or H2 tags, we look at keeping those at a max of 2 keywords per header tag, and definitely still central to the theme of the page. So if the theme of the page is about, if the theme of the page is about, say, volunteering, you wouldn't want your header tag to have some unrelated keyword within it. You'd want your header tag to still be in relation to the content that's there. And then site copy recommendations. So here's just some best practices to take away from with this. Definitely thinking about descriptions. So again, if you have images on the page, you're making sure that they have alt tags, but it's also an opportunity to provide a description right below that image about what the image is actually displaying, giving a little bit more context to it, kind of like a image description.
You mean like a caption?
Yes, yes, yes. The next thing is breaking up the copy. So obviously, you all know when you get to a site and it's 2,000 words on a page that you're not going to go through it. It's going to be boring and you're going to click off. And we as searchers don't have attention spans for that anymore. You definitely want to keep copy kind of in short snippets that are digestible, but kind of err around that 200 to 250 words within your content is kind of the sweet spot. Don't keyword stuff, so don't have like the same keyword 28 times in the first paragraph. It's going to look spammy to the search engines. And then the other really great thing is using bullets. So search engines know kind of the way that the bullet is coded, that the emphasis is going to be on the content that's within that bullet. It's a short snippet. You're saying it's a priority because you've put that bullet there. So leveraging bullets within your content helps give some more context to the search engines of relevancy to your page. So I threw a lot out there in probably a short amount of time. Does anyone have questions specifically on those slides? I know we have some time later to really workshop through some various things and to provide some deeper support. Yeah.
You said you would be getting a copy. Is this going to be a printout or a file?
I believe it's going to be a file, Robbie.
Yes. Yeah, it'll be a file, and then it should be on the YouTube page description afterwards. Yes, we can email everybody.
Yeah.
I had read somewhere that metadata keywords are no longer relevant. Is that real?
Yeah, so we still put keywords in as a best practice when we're filling kind of the section. So metadata is title, description, and keywords. Keywords aren't in consideration anymore within the search engines, only because people were keyword stuffing and putting like 1,800 keywords within this little piece of code. But for the sake of just having a placeholder, we generally still put them in. We're looking at probably around 5 to 10 at the very max of being the ideal spot there. And really, it's just in case there's still some niche engine out there that wants to obtain that data, that we've got it included within the content we've provided to a site.
I would add just one more little detail or note to Leslie's presentation. So as she's talking about the importance of content for SEO, and the old adage, content is king and things. One thing that I'm seeing with a lot of nonprofit clients right now is that they're kind of struggling with, you're in a unique position as a nonprofit, that you have a lot of good stories to tell. A lot of the time you have a lot of good content to provide. But when it comes to SEO and optimizing your site, it's sort of a balance between the emotional content and the more functional content. So, there's really cool nonprofit sites out there like Charity Water, and they have this really beautiful imagery, and it's really impactful, and that's really good for user experience and trying to drive, people to be engaging with your site, but it's also important to consider, sort of the sticky content or the content that needs to actually be functional on the page in order to optimize for the search engines. So we can talk more about that in the workshop, but just wanted to point that out. So we can pass it on to Ariana now for a pay-per-click overview.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Ariana, and I am a paid search strategist or pay-per-click strategist, whatever you want to call me. I've been in the paid search space since 2009 now. I previously worked for small and medium-sized business pay-per-click, and now at the agency I work on some nonprofit clients and then some B2C clients. So we're going to get into kind of what pay-per-click is and basically what all goes into it and a little bit on optimization. But before we get started, just out of curiosity, I want to do an informal poll. How many of you are running pay-per-click advertising right now? Just one, two. How many of you have done so in the past? How many of you have possibly thought about it and then crossed off because it costs money? Okay. Well, we're going to get into what it is and why you might want to use it. So as Leslie talked about earlier, the search page is split into paid and organic results, and she's kind of been over the organic piece. But the paid ads make up a good chunk of the page and really more all the time. I don't know if you've ever noticed that there seem to be more and more ads taking up room. You usually find them at the top of the page, on the sides, sometimes at the bottom. They appear in different formats. Usually it's text, but sometimes you'll see ones with images, extra links in them. There's a bunch of different formats that they can appear. So as far as why you might want to advertise with pay-per-click, it's measurable. You can pretty much see what's working and what's not pretty quickly and then make changes. So it's more instantaneous, whereas everything that Leslie talked about takes a while to implement, and then for the search engines to read all those changes and then sort of change your rank and what you're showing up for. Pay-per-click, you can pretty much upload a campaign, change your keywords, change your ad text, and within a few minutes to an hour, your ads are showing on the page. And then finally, it's targeted, whereas you have some control over your SEO, how you show up. You can really get highly targeted with pay-per-click. So you can say, I want to show in these specific regions, these specific zip codes even, and really these types of keywords and this time of day. So you can get a lot more detailed. A little bit more in depth on other reasons you might want to use pay-per-click. You can drive highly qualified traffic to your site. If you're having a hard time getting people to notice your site with your SEO, you can use PPC to complement that and drive traffic in addition. You can use it for testing, so maybe you're thinking about doing an advertising campaign or something like that, and you're not kind of sure what message you want to use. Pay-per-click is a really good place to test different messages against each other and kind of see what resonates with people and what they're going to click on. You have complete control over your message and that targeting that I was alluding to, so you can go really broad or really narrow. It's up to you. And it's tailored to your budget as well. So with pay-per-click, you're really only paying for the ads that generate clicks. So you can spend as little as a couple dollars a day to hundreds of thousands of dollars a day for really large advertisers. So it really fits within whatever budget you have to work with. And then it works hand in hand with everything that Leslie was just talking about. So your organic listing on the page and having paid listings on the page, those really work together. There's more visibility on the page for your organization, and they kind of support each other. And then finally, you can compete with your competitors. Maybe your competitor is showing up in the organic space for keywords that you really want to own and you're just not there yet. You can throw up some pay-per-click ads and compete with them in those top spaces on the page as well. So really in any pay-per-click account or paid search account is another word for it, it has the similar structure. So whether you're in Bing or you're in Google, it's really made up of 5 parts. The first thing is you're going to have an overarching account for your organization. And then within that, you can have multiple campaigns. You could run a single campaign, you could have hundreds of campaigns. And those are really kind of the groups of things that you want to promote. So maybe you have events or a product you want to promote or something like that. You can separate them into different campaigns with different targeting if you want, different keywords, different ads. And those are really the pieces that fall into your campaign. So the next, you can think of it as like a tree structure. So down in your campaign, you'll then split it even further into ad groups. And those are really just similar targeted sets of keywords and themes that are made up of both keywords and ads. So here's an example, if this doesn't make a whole lot of sense yet, just talking about it. So you have your Google AdWords account, or if you're a nonprofit, perhaps a Google Grants account, which we'll get into in a minute. And then let's say you're a video production services company. So you just want to run one campaign for your video production services to try to get people's attention on those types of terms. So then you want to split it into two different themes of ad groups. So maybe you want to run on some companies terms and then some services terms. You'd split them into two different groups so that you can highly target your message. So in the first one, you have Denver video production companies, and all your keywords there are different variations that have the word company or companies in it. And then you can write an ad that perfectly tailors to that. So it says production companies Denver. In the other ad group, you have Denver Video Production Services. So your keywords are really based around the idea of services, and your ad text matches that. And that's really a best practice because it's going to really help you target your message to exactly what people are looking for, and really help you as far as your chance of showing up on the page for those keywords. So that's the basic part. Getting a little bit deeper, there are additional things that you can add to your text ads. And these are some of those extra features that you might see on the search page. Sometimes it's a little link below the text ad or a little icon. And those are called ad extensions. So with Google, they have 6 main types right now. Bing has a few less. I think it's like 3 or 4. But they really just give users additional information about what you're advertising on. So one of the things that they have is review extensions, which can show up as like a star format or even a quote about your organization or a product you're advertising to kind of say this is what people think of it and give you a little bit more credibility. Then there's also social extensions. So if your organization has a Google Plus page and you have more than 100 followers, you can link your Google Plus account to it, and then below your ad it will say such and such organization has 200 followers. So it gives you a little bit of that social credibility that people are interacting with you, know of you, and you're active in that space. If you have a mobile app, there's also these app extensions that you can download an application directly from the ad. It'll link to it. And probably more relevant is the 3 on the right. So there's location extensions and phone call extensions. So if you have a location-based business, then you can add your address and your phone number. People can call directly or get a link to the map for your organization directly from your ad. And then finally, site link extensions. So those are just little extra links that show up below your ad, and you can use those for all kinds of things. Really any page on your site that you want to give people options to click to in addition to wherever you're sending the main part of the ad. So let's say you want people to sign up for your email list. You can use a site link extension to go to your email sign up page. Or let's say you have a donation page. You can then do a site link or several site links that say donate to this cause, or donate $20, donate $50. You can use multiple types at the same time. They will show up together in some cases. Google and Bing kind of dictate when they show up together and when they don't, but it's really a best practice to use at least one kind, and really whatever's relevant to your campaign. So once you set up your campaign and your ad groups and you select your keywords and you write your ads and maybe you put some ad extensions on them, you're really ready to start advertising. And a little bit differently, than SEO, it works on an auction system. So if you think about eBay, it's the similar kind of thing. You have multiple advertisers all bidding for the same keywords and targeting. And so what's going to happen is you're going to have your keywords and you're advertising to Colorado, and another organization is doing the same thing. So you're going to put a bid on your keyword and say, this is the most I want to pay for a click on my ad. And the other advertiser is going to do the same thing. Google is going to look at both of you and say, this one ranks higher than the other because of a combination of your bid, your budget, and something that they call quality score, which is really just how relevant the engine thinks your ad is to what you're advertising. So a little example in that graph there, you can see the first advertiser was bidding $2 on their keyword. They had a quality score of 10 because maybe they were bidding on something that really matches the page, so they have an ad rank of 20. Versus advertiser 2, they're bidding more, but their quality score is lower, so they have a little bit lower of an ad rank. So advertiser 1 is going to end up winning. And that really dictates if you show up at all on the page and where you show up on the page. So that's really how it works. Anyone have any questions on that part? Yeah.
So if you're like going for a certain time, can you then adjust your time and maybe that same, if you lost, say, and you're looking to get your keyword, do you then like change your time to try to get opportunity?
You can control time to some degree. It's what we call day parting, and you can say I want to run during these hours, but you don't really have any control over exactly when within those times that you're advertising you show up. A lot of it depends on how much money you have to spend, how quickly you've already spent through during that day, and then also the search demand. It goes up and down all the time for different keywords, so it's hard to predict that.
You just like pick a different day though, maybe you're going to be winning day.
Yeah, or you can try doing things like changing your bid, other optimization techniques to try to increase your quality score so that you can pay less and still show up.
So in optimization, you can optimize you can see where your ad position was on a certain day, and you can say, okay, I was in position 5, I want to move up to position number 2, so I'm going to increase my bid, and then maybe I'll show up and I'll win.
Yeah.
But you're saying you could up your rank even by just changing SEO type stuff?
No, not well, to some degree, depending on the content on your site. If the content is really, really relevant to the keyword that you're advertising on, and then also to your ad text, that will help. But the engines decide how relevant it thinks that keyword is to your content. So it's kind of hard to predict that. But you'll notice that, like, if you're running on your organization's brand name, for example, you're probably going to have a really high quality score. Whereas if you're advertising on something general, it's going to be lower. So you can sort of try to make your ad text and your keywords and your content fit together better to increase your quality score. So once you're up and running, what do you want to look at to figure out if it's doing well? There's a lot of metrics in a pay-per-click account, and it can be really overwhelming, but the main ones that you probably want to pay attention to are your clicks, how much traffic you're getting, impressions, that's how much your ad is showing up on the page every time someone's searching. The click-through rate, which is just clicks divided by impressions. So, for every time you're showing up, how often are people clicking through to your site? The higher the click-through rate, it kind of indicates that the ad that you're advertising is more relevant to what keywords you're running on, what people were searching for. Another metric that's really important, especially if you have low budgets, is cost per click. So how much are you willing to pay for those clicks? What are they worth to your organization? And then finally, conversions and conversion rate. So a conversion can be anything that you want to track that an action is that someone is taking after getting to your site from an ad. So it could be anything from a donation to email signups. You set that up, you tell it what you want to track, and then you look at, are your ads driving those conversions? Yeah.
I have a big question on that.
Yeah.
For newsletter signups and donations and event registration and all that kind of stuff, I have a Google brand account, but I have no idea where to track that. I don't know if you want to save that for later, but
Yeah.
overall, I don't know how it knows newsletter has been signed up for. Like, where do I put that?
There's a couple of different ways you can do it. You can either do it through the engines themselves. In like an AdWords account at the top, there's all those buttons and it has like tools, and there's a tab that says conversions, and you just basically set up different snippets of code that end up going on the confirmation pages for those confirmations on your site. The other way you can do it is through Google Analytics that Sam's going to get into a little bit more, and link your analytics account with your Google AdWords account, and then it'll pull those conversions in. Yeah.
You just contract with Google, Yahoo, and Bing, or are there others like DuckDuckGo? Do they do anything? And also, how do you choose which ones to use?
We mostly run on Google and the Bing Yahoo network. Google has 80% market share in search, and then Bing's about 15%. And then there's some lesser ones with AOL, but some of those engines have partnerships with Google. They're called search partners, and so if you're advertising on Google or Yahoo Bing network, you're already kind of advertising on those by default unless you turn it off. So that's really where we focus most of our attention. There are other engines out there. We have done one with an engine called Redz for a client before. It didn't really work out so well, but we're willing to try things. It depends on what your goals are and where the people that you're trying to reach are searching to. That's a good question. Just knowing that Google and Bing own so much of the search space, like the vast majority of people are going to be there. But if you have demographic data that indicates that, then there's ways you can kind of looking into other ones.
I'd also say if you do have analytics and you're able to view kind of where those people are coming from, and you see some indicator that a large percentage is coming from a niche search engine, you'd be able to use that to help guide your strategy.
And then, of course, outside of the United States, there are a number of other engines as well, but we don't usually go in that direction right now with our current clients. Yeah?
I mean, obviously it kind of depends on your budget and your ranking, but what's a good cost per click to be looking for you guys?
The answer really in everything pay-per-click is it depends.
Yeah.
I hate to say that, but it's completely true. A lot of it depends on how competitive the terms you're advertising are.
For an example, though, like for a brand term, your cost per click is going to be a few cents in a lot of cases, right?
Yeah.
Versus something like give to charity or donate to charity.
Yeah.
That's going to be upwards of $5 to $10,
Things
and
to
that
do in
goes up during
Colorado.
holiday.
Yeah, and competition is a big part of it too. So the more competitive terms are, the more expensive they're going to be. So like in Nikki's example, give to charity, some of those charity terms are really highly expensive, especially during the holiday season.
Yeah.
Whereas if you find terms that are a little bit more niche, you can expect to pay a little bit less. Yeah. You had a question?
Say, what if like the terms that people use to possibly find you don't match with the language you want to use? Would this be a useful tool? Like the low cost versus subsidized?
Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to necessarily make the keyword that you're running on exactly match what you're saying in the ad. It helps your quality score and your relevance if they do match, but definitely if it's like a synonym and you don't want it to say in your ad specifically low cost or cheap, but you still want to capture people who might be searching that way, that's perfectly fine to do that. Yeah.
This is kind of more of the back end, I guess. Do you need to set up a separate account for each website that you might be working for, or as a webmaster, can I set up one account and then have campaigns for various?
With different domains, you can, in a regular paid account, send to different domains. If you're okay with them all billing to the same thing, that's probably the main consideration. And if you're not going to have more than several, I think 100 campaigns, you can run them from one account, but sometimes it's helpful to run them from multiple accounts just to keep things separated as far as billing or even just looking at your conversion metrics or your budget and things like that. Yeah. Is there one more? Yeah.
Does Bing have anything like the Google grants?
They do not. Google is the only one right now, and we're going to get into that in a minute, but I wish they did, but as of right now, they don't. Okay. All right, so optimization. This probably isn't going to make a lot of sense for those of you who haven't run it before or aren't running it right now, but just know that once you're up and running, there are a lot of different ways to improve your performance with everything from your click-through rate to your cost per click, really whatever you want to focus on, even if that's, you know, a specific type of conversion. At the campaign level, you can adjust your budget. So budget is set at the campaign level. So you can, if you see that one campaign is performing better than another, you can give it more money. You can change settings. So you can change how things are targeted. We were talking about running different times of the day. You can do that at the campaign level. At the ad group level, you can really split things into more refined more thematic ad groups. So we talked about low income versus subsidized. Those are two things that you might want to split into two different ad groups so that you can write more specific ad text if it fits with what you want to be saying. At the keyword level, there's tons of stuff you can do. You can experiment with your bids. If you see competitors coming into the space, you can raise your bids on the keywords that are really important to you. You can lower them in some cases if you're seeing that you're just showing up at the top of the page all the time and there's not a ton of competition. You can expand keywords all the time. You can remove keywords or pause them if they're not doing well. It's really great because you can make these changes, pause things, and then 2 weeks later, if you change your mind, you can turn it back on. Another thing you can do is add negative keywords. So really, this is just an exclusion process. So let's say your organization has a name really similar to a different organization that does something completely different, and you don't want to show up and waste your money for people who are looking for that other organization. You can add that as a negative keyword so that it stops your ad from showing for those queries. At the ad level, you can always change your ad text. You can run multiple ads at a time. So really best practice is to run 2 to 4 ad variations per ad group. Really high search volume ad groups, you want to run probably more like 4. If they don't have a lot of volume, 2 is probably fine. But you can always turn things on and off or change your call to action or change your headline, really anything that's a part of that ad text as you go along. One thing we haven't touched on yet is where you're going to send these ads. So whatever landing page you're sending to, you might find that you think that this donation page is going to do better, but then you see that your conversion rate is pretty low, so maybe you have a different place that you could send the same ad to and experiment to see if that does any better. And then finally, there's just a lot of variation that happens that affects search from externally. So maybe there's things like different keywords that become popular during holiday season or something like that. You want to kind of monitor those trends and add keywords, remove keywords, adjust your bids to meet those external forces. So, grants. We just touched on this a minute ago. This is probably a really interesting piece for you guys because this is really Google's gift to nonprofit organizations. Google offers free advertising through their Google for Nonprofits program of up to $10,000 a month for qualified 501c3s. So there are a lot of limitations around it. You can't do everything that you can do in a paid account, but it's a really great resource. We do manage some Google Grants accounts for some of our clients, and it's a really great resource. Some of the things to be aware of with Google Grants is that it can only be text-based ads. You can't run video or images or anything like that. You can only set your keyword bids to $2 at most, so you're kind of limited there and able to raise your bids really highly. And then you're always going to show below paying advertisers, which that's kind of their way of balancing out and making it even and fair for them. But if you're running on kind of low competition terms or like your organization name, there's probably not a lot of competition from paid advertisers in that space. So who is eligible? There's some rules around it, but it's not entirely clear based on what's grants on their site. But basically, if you're part of the government, you can't get a grant, or if you're a hospital or a school, except there's an exception if you're a philanthropic arm of one of those organizations. If you think you might apply but aren't sure, you can go ahead and try to apply anyway and see what Google tells you. And it's really simple application process. It's just part of the Google for Nonprofits program. So if you already are part of that program, it's really just adding grants to your existing account. If you're not part of that program, you need to apply through Google for Nonprofits and then enroll in Google Grants after you're accepted. And it's really, it used to be a long form and now it's just a simple online form. So they've simplified it quite a bit. And I guess that's it for me. I'm going to hand it back over to Nikki, and she's going to go into a little bit more on some of the things that you really want to think about for nonprofits, specifically with pay-per-click.
Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
The right one works.
This. Okay. So we just wanted to put together some high-level thoughts, 3 or so slides, I think, of optimization techniques and things that we have seen work for us, for the nonprofit clients we manage paid search accounts for. So I am hesitant to say these are best practices because, of course, it's different from organization to organization. But at a general level, these are some good ideas for you to try. And, you know, optimization becomes just that much more important when you only are running within a Google Grants account because you are capped at that $2 bid. So it's really important that you're optimizing your ads well in order to, you know, help gain better ad position, better visibility, and really, you know, outrank some of the other grants advertisers. Even though you won't ever be able to go above the paid. A lot of these optimization techniques, of course, apply to paid accounts as well. If you're moving, you know, a lot of nonprofits start bidding in the paid space during holiday season just because the competition increases so much, and then they come off of the paid space and just use their Google Grants account throughout the rest of the year. So this slide is talking about ad text. So make your ads credible. That's not unique, of course, to a nonprofit, but it's becoming really important for nonprofits out there because there's so many more charity organizations and things like that or advertising just in general in the search space. So really determining how you set yourself apart from organizations that may be less credible and you know how to make your ads stand out. So a few ways to do that: use title case and don't use too many abbreviations or punctuation or special characters, things that look spammy. Just kind of along the same lines with what Leslie was talking about. Use applicable special characters, so like the registered trademark symbol. This is definitely something that we have seen help increase click-through rates and ad position overall. So you can see that in the top example there, donate to example charity with the registered trademark. That just makes people feel like they're clicking on a credible charity, something that's real. Also using www.nonprofit.com/official site. So the important part of that is using the /official site in your display URL. So you can see that in that top example to the right as well in the green. And then if there's independent reviews of your organization, so this is a fairly new feature within Google AdWords. So if you have a review from Charity Navigator or Forbes or really any review content out there, well, I don't know if it's any. You can.
It has to be in the last year.
Okay.
And it can't be on like forums or anything like that. It can't be like someone's comment. But otherwise, if it's an independent online source, you can use it.
So it pulls in. This is just another way to make your ad more credible. So you can see the rated 4 out of 4 stars by Charity Navigator. Now, I know, again, in a lot of nonprofits I talk to, that's a little bit of a sensitive subject. You know, charity watchdogs like Charity Navigator, you don't want to put too much emphasis on that necessarily. But in some cases, not in some cases, in most cases that we've used it for nonprofits so far, it has helped increase click-through rates. Okay, so the call to action that you're using in your ad, of course, that's another thing that's important with any ad. And these 3 examples here in these images, you definitely want to do testing with any sort of pay-per-click advertising or in your grants advertising. And the one key element to test within that ad text are your calls to action. So at the end of the ad, if you're saying to people, donate now, or give today, or please help, that's definitely something that you want to try to test out and see what works best for your organization. In a general sense, we do see the word donate now, donate today convert better and have better click-through rates than give sort of calls to action. But again, I suggest that you test that out. Calls to action, make a big difference in overall performance. So it influences all those things that Ariana was talking about with click quality score and ad position, and then ultimately that helps you get a lower cost per click so that you are able to compete more competitively within the Google Grants space. Another thought is to test different calls to action based on the donor personas that you're reaching. So whether or not you have your donor base segmented out based on specific different personas, you probably at least have some differences in the different types of target audiences you're trying to reach, even with if it's with the different sort of ages of your donor base. So one example of this, and that we've been talking a lot about with nonprofit organizations, is ways to reach that younger millennials audience versus sort of what nonprofits call their loyal donor base. It's the baby boomers and older who are akin to giving to nonprofit organizations. They typically do every single year during holiday season. They may be an audience that responds better to donate now or give today, versus a younger audience may respond better to join now, make a difference, help join a movement. They're really that audience that wants to be more engaged. And then test non-donation calls to action as well, so like email list signups. So Ariana mentioned putting us in an ad extension, a site link to have people sign up for an email. That's another thing that you should can incorporate with a donate call to action or have the ad focused on that. And then lastly, just talking through going along with the importance of testing, it's one of our recommendations always to clients to test different donation ask amounts. So what works in email and direct mail in terms of donation ask amounts may not work in paid search. We have done a test for a client recently where we were testing a $25 ask versus a $50 ask. We let it run for about 3 months, and there was a slight trend towards the $25 ask in terms of getting more donations, but I think it was the $50 ask that resulted in a higher average gift. So again, it just depends on your overall goals and if you're trying to increase your overall average gift online or if you're trying to increase the number of transactions or gifts online. Mobile users may tend to give smaller amounts than desktop computer users, so you can tailor your mobile ads with different donation ask amounts. Again, this changes because more and more people are using their mobile phones just to browse and to do things on their mobile phone in general. But we do see a trend typically towards people giving lower donation amounts on mobile, and that can definitely tie to all the text to give type campaigns that we see out there for like Red Cross and things like that. It's just easy to quickly give $10 and you don't feel like you're having to give a whole lot of yourself and be worried about that. Donation amounts can vary based on the donor's search. So, determining what really is the searcher's intent, and then testing different amounts based on the different stages in the donor life cycle that they're in. So I know I'm sure you've heard of the purchase decision cycle when we're talking about, B2B organizations. And we typically talk with our clients a lot about the donor life cycle and sort of matching the same sort of concept. So are they in the research phase? Do they already know about your organization? Are they maybe don't know about your organization, but they're very concerned and engaged with your cause and with the issue that you're fighting for? And so the more general sort of charity audience, somebody that's just searching give to charity during a holiday season, probably, typically responds to lower donation ask amounts versus somebody that's very engaged with your cause and really concerned about the issue is likely to convert at a higher amount. And then try different ask amounts in the site link ad extensions too. So I think Ariana mentioned that. We've done tests where you can have, I think, 4 or 6 site links show up in your pay-per-click ad, and asking for different donation amounts in each of them, and really tying an impact. So just $10 helps provide books for, a child in school, or just $20 helps pay a heating bill 1 month for a family. So really tying your ad language to the direct impact that donation ask amount is giving as well. And then just a few other notes when, I wanted to add, because we had a little bit of a conversation around budget and day parting. I know that a lot, as nonprofit organizations, we're often faced with limited budgets, more so than, a B2B organization or a big consumer brand. So different ways we've tried to sort of fit with the limited budgets that we're working with is to use things like day parting. So if you've looked at Google Analytics and you see that most of your audience comes to your website during certain times of day, you can tailor your pay-per-click ads to only show during those times of day, so that you're not just blowing through budget 24 hours a day. You can also look at peak donation times. So if you have data on donations that you receive on your website, maybe you receive most donations after the hour of 5 o'clock, or mostly during the work week versus the weekend. So up your budget for your paid ads during those times to really make the most efficient use of your budget. And then geo-targeting is another really good way to help manage your a lower budget. So you can geo-target to specific zip codes if you're for your target audiences, and really only bring in that relevant audience. And then the last thing is talking through, the concept of donor life cycle and targeting specific donor personas with your ads. That's another indication of a good way to structure your overall campaigns. So if you have, if you are able to segment your donor base based on maybe ages, so you have a millennials campaign, you have a baby boomers campaign, a different way to do it is to think about the searcher intent. So you have a general charity type campaign that has some of those general charity terms, and then you have your brand campaign with your brand terms, and then a third campaign that's maybe really specific to your cause. So if you're fighting hunger, you're going to have a hunger campaign. And that's just another way that you can help manage your budget, because those general charity words like give to charity are going to eat through your budget right away. So if you structure the campaigns that way, you can make sure to give a limited amount of budget to that, and give your brand terms much more, or give your specific mission terms much more budget. And I'll probably pass this off to Leslie. I can talk through it. So this is a slide that Leslie built, actually, as our search director. And what this is really showing is the importance of integration between SEO and PPC. So Ariana mentioned that they really work together and in conjunction with one another. So if you have a organic listing for your website in the middle of the search engine results, and then you also have a pay-per-click ad, there are studies that say there's an incremental lift in overall clicks over to the website, whether it be from PPC or your organic listing, if you have visibility in both spaces. So a lot of the conversations we have sometimes with nonprofits too, knowing that they work with limited budgets, is what are the terms that I should be paying for versus terms that I can just rely on organic visibility for. So, for example, brand terms, there's lower competition for those typically. So, do I need to be paying for those when I probably have my website showing up at the top of the search engine results anyways? So there's conflicting opinions about that. We've done tests, and our stance as an agency is that it is always important to have somewhat of a paid visibility for your brand terms because of that incremental lift that you see in traffic. But really, this is something that they do work together, and so you can tailor your strategy to help determine, okay, what are the top priority keywords that I want to be bidding on and paying for in the paid space, and what are terms that I really should be optimizing for on my website to show up for organic visibility. So if you start over on the left with SEO, really you always want to be optimizing for your brand terms, of course, and then variations of your brand terms. So brand word plus organization, or brand term plus charity. Also key vertical terms, so things that are, and really this ties to sort of mission terms. So again, I keep going back to, hunger organizations, but you want to be optimizing for those mission terms. So if you're a hunger organization, things like fighting hunger, ending hunger, hunger charity, hunger organization, those types of things. And then really evaluating those SEO terms and saying, okay, do I also need to have visibility in the paid space for these? And so there, I think this ties to the whole subsidized versus low income conversation of you can have somewhat of misaligned messaging within your paid ads. So you may not optimize for the word subsidized or low income on your site, but instead you use the word subsidized. It's okay within the paid space to use that word because it's similar, and you're going to be able to get, capture those users that may be using those searching on those different types of terms. In the paid space, again, your mission, your vertical type terms, misspellings of your brand terms. So again, you're not going to optimize for those on your website because you're not going to spell your brand name wrong on your content. But people could potentially search and spell your brand name wrong. And so those are things that you can bid on in the paid space and have your ad show up for. Terms that have overall low search volume, so it's pretty easy to get visibility with those. And then again, like we said, immediate visibility. So if it takes a little bit of time for search engines to read your content and for you to get visibility, with paid, you can get your ad up and running within 5 minutes. It's also important to point out with this is if your organization is impacted by current events or happenings in the outside world, a lot of times it's important for you to respond to those so you can get an ad up right away and say that we're helping respond to this event, or here's our opinion. And so they're always working together, and again, it's kind of a cyclical, fluid optimization that you're deciding where each term should live. And so for an example of things that you may want to move from if you're seeing that your paid term isn't doing well and you want to move to your SEO, terms that are high cost and low ROI. So they're costing you a lot of money, you're getting a lot of clicks, but they're not converting well for you on the site. So when they click from a paid ad to the site, they're not signing up for the e-newsletter or they're not giving a donation, yet you're still having to pay for those clicks. So it may not be worth it for you to pay for those terms. Also terms that have low ad positioning and a high cost per click. So again, things that could benefit from a boost in organic optimization. So I know that was a really long-winded sort of explanation. Does that make sense? Are there questions on this?
So if people are clicking a lot on your website because you paid for an ad, like they're clicking on your paid ad, does that help your organic? Like directly, you're ranking directly?
Not on organic. It's sort of the flip-flop, right? Not directly, but it doesn't help your organic positioning. It's more important how you have optimized your site.
Right.
So there's evaluations on where the click went to once it came to your site? Like
From the search engine.
Converted, where it converted.
So Google doesn't measure once somebody gets to the site whether they converted, depending on however you're defining that conversion, but they are reading the content on the page that you're sending users to and determining if they think that content's relevant to whatever keyword you were bidding on and whatever your ad text said. Does that make sense? Is that correct as well, Leslie? Okay. Anything else? Okay, then I'm going to pass it off to Sam, and he's going to do an overview of Google Analytics.
And I also have a little kind of handout recapping what goes into pay-per-click and kind of what things you want to think about if you decide to go down that path.
Also, has everybody done a sign-in sheet? Has everyone signed in on one of them? Yeah? Okay. Good.
Okay, so to introduce Google Analytics, analytics, web analytics in general, will never tell you what to do. It'll only tell you what's going on your site. So no matter how well it's set up, you're always going to need smart people who can take that data and translate it. So you're going to want to have a Nikki on your team or a Leslie or an Ariana on your team to take that data and actually know how to use it and leverage it in optimizing a website or optimizing a campaign. So one thing I'm going to ask everybody to do, because we've all been sitting for a really long time, is can everybody stand up? You can stretch out. If you believe you're a Google Analytics expert, you can go ahead and sit down. All right, good. Because otherwise this presentation might be a little bit boring for you, and you might want to go on Facebook or something else. But go ahead and take a seat now. So we wanted to start with kind of breaking down what the analytics tag is. So the analytics tag is broken into a couple pieces. This is the analytics tag for 90 Octane. What we use is what's called the synchronous tag. We're kind of one version behind at the moment. There's a couple versions that preceded this one, so if this may not look like the exact tag you have on the that you have on your site. Google originally started with a tag called Urchin, which I took a look at some of your sites, and some of you still have. They moved to another version called Synchronous, and now they're on an asynchronous. And they have a new version that I'll go over here in just a few minutes. But to kind of break down the way this tag works is the top portion is telling analytics what account to track to. So the top portion is made up of what account to track to, what the domain might be, and this is useful if your site has subdomains. So if you have a domain and then on your site you might have blog.domain.com. You're going to want to make sure that you have that set domain because that's telling analytics that these two domains actually belong to one account. Another item that you're going to want to have if you have multiple domains, and technically they're all part of the same site. So you might have something like blog.domain.com, and then you might have shopdomain.com. So no dot. So it's not a subdomain, it's a brand new domain. What we have is what we see here on the about third from the bottom there that's not covered in blue. It's called allow linker. What that's doing for Google is it's allowing the cookie to be passed from one domain to the next so that those two domains don't look like two separate sites to your analytics account, and actually treats it as one analytics account. This is common when you have a shopping cart that might be not part of your website, but might be managed by another website altogether, or another web vendor altogether. So usually what we'll see is we'll have like a domain, and then all of a sudden when you jump into the shopping cart, you'll see shopdomain.com. So you're not a subdomain, but you're actually a completely separate site in the eyes of Google. What will happen if you don't have that is Google will actually treat those two domains as two separate things, and they'll treat each other as a referral. So it won't act like you're on the same site. It'll treat it as, oh, these are two separate sites, and I see that traffic is going back between the two of them.
But that's only if you own the second one. If you're using an off-site vendor, you can't link any.
If you do not own the second domain, one thing you can do is ask that offsite vendor to put this analytics tag on the shopping cart for you. If that's something that they cannot do, then unfortunately there's nothing that analytics can do for you. The second piece of the tag, and actually more importantly, is the JavaScript. So this is actually what's sending the data back to analytics. Without this JavaScript firing, nothing actually gets tracked. So if you have a user who doesn't have JavaScript turned on, which is actually very small, because most websites leverage some sort of JavaScript for one functionality or another, analytics will actually not be able to track this person. So if you want to become not trackable to analytics, one way to do it is to turn off your JavaScript, but then half of the web will probably break for you. So it's not the greatest of experiences, but it's something you can do. I'm going to come back to this because there's a few stats within analytics where the fact that the JavaScript doesn't fire actually affects the way the numbers turn out. So I was mentioning how Google has 3 different versions of the tag, or multiple versions of the tag. And they've recently released a new one called Universal Analytics. Universal Analytics is still in beta, which means sometimes it will be buggy. Sometimes it'll work. Sometimes it won't work. Google has not come out and said how accurate it is or when it is working and when it's not. It's something that we're going to be testing here in the near future because we want to see what new features come out with it. Now, Google has said that this is the tag of the future, so eventually they will ask everybody to move over to this tag, especially if you want any new features. So any new features coming out in the next couple of years will be based on the universal tag and not on the previous versions of the tag.
Sorry to interrupt, but you're saying there's different tags. So when I got my analytics account, it was like 2 years ago.
Yep.
That's the tag that I took.
Yep.
It's on my current website.
Yes.
You're saying that I should go back into analytics, find a new tag, and add that into my site?
Yes, it depends. One thing to look for if you want to know if you've got the most recent tag is to log into your account. Under the admin section, there is that like JavaScript piece that allows you to create a new tag. Go ahead and check that tag and then go and check your site and see if it's matching. The easiest way to do it is to pull like a couple lines out of that tag that analytics provides to you and then just search for it in the HTML of your website. It should be on every single page because that's the proper setup. So you should have this tag across every page of your website, and if possible, including your shopping cart, because it's really important to know what's going on in your shopping cart or in your donation process or your credit card processing. But the universal tag has some interesting things in it. The universal tag allows you to choose which domains that you want to consider search engines. So if you've got a domain that right now Google is identified as a referral or something that's not considered a search engine, you can actually go in there and set it yourself. There are also a way inside of Google Analytics Universal is to eliminate certain keywords. So if you want to consider a keyword not a search keyword, but something else, you can do that by going into Universal Analytics. And this is actually all done through the interface. So you don't have to know any HTML to be able to make these customizations. This is kind of all happening through the admin itself. The next piece I want to talk about, and this actually exists today. So this is demographic information through analytics. Demographics and retargeting is a feature that came out probably around about a year and a half ago. But the idea behind it is Google is tied with DoubleClick, which is their media branch. What this would do is if you were to change your analytics tag, and you can also do this within the admin, it's one of the features that if you just click on, it'll actually change the tag for you. What this will do is it'll allow you to do one of two things. First, it'll allow you to do retargeting using Google Analytics instead of the DoubleClick admin. So if you want to set up a goal and say anybody who completes this goal or does not complete this goal, I want to retarget them later in the retargeting through Google AdWords. You can do that. The other piece, which is a little bit more interesting, is it actually starts to populate some of the demographic information. So the age, the gender. It'll also give you characteristics and interests. So if someone's interested in team sports, individual sports. Now, this is really enticing, but this is where we lean away from recommending this. So what this actually does is it changes the cookie that Google uses. Google normally uses a first-party cookie, which is pretty widely accepted, and no one's blocking it. As soon as you do this, you're now putting a third-party cookie on your website, which many browsers by default actually reject. So one thing we've actually seen across our clients is the clients that do add this, they can see anywhere between a 10% to about a 30% drop in their traffic that they're now measuring. It had nothing to do with traffic disappearing. It's just now there's so many browsers that eliminate third-party cookies right off the bat that they're not allowing you to be tracked. So it's kind of a catch-22. There are technology solutions around getting around this, but they're provided by third parties. There's no solution that Google has ever provided that says this is how you get around this issue. So going into the admin itself, or the interface itself, Google Analytics is kind of broken out into a couple of different sections. The first section is going to be audience, which is who's visiting my site. It gives you characteristics about the person visiting your site. Where are they coming from? So what state, what country, what city? Google's doing this through IP, kind of backing into the IP. This is a little bit risky just because of the way the internet's set up. For example, our entire office at 90 Octane, we're about 40 people. We all come from one IP address, which means if we're VPNing from Chicago and we're going through our own network, we don't look like we're from Chicago, we look like we're from Denver. It's a little bit misleading, but it gives you good directional information as to where your visitors are coming from. Another thing that's really important that we like to look at is the device. So with the world that's changing and how fast people are moving to mobile, this helps us decide when we're working with our clients and when we're working with nonprofits if they should have a mobile component or not. Not every site looks great on a mobile phone. There are specific things that you need to do. And for nonprofits, it may be even more important to think about having a mobile app or having something like a responsive site or a site that flexes so that the donation piece is what's on the forefront instead of maybe the homepage with a big header image and all you can see is an image, but you don't really know what you're looking at. So what we use a lot of this information for is to identify who these people are. So what browsers, what devices, and how often they're coming back to our site. The next piece is going to be kind of tying back to what Ariana, Nikki, and Leslie talked about, which is acquisition. So where are they coming from? The interesting thing about Google is that they're very good at tying all their products together. So if you have a webmaster's account and if you have a AdWords account, all of these things can be tied back into analytics. So in a single location, you can see what keywords are actually driving to your site. What search engines are they using? And where are they coming from? Is there a random referral site that's driving a lot of traffic to your website? And maybe you should reach out and contact them and ask them, how are they driving all this traffic to your site? These are all key things when looking at, where should you put your dollars? As a nonprofit, you don't have the advertising budgets that a B2C company does. So it's more important to look at where you should be. Something you may want to look at is Google. If you click inside of Google, it'll actually tell you what keywords are coming through. Now, one thing you are going to see when you do click into any sort of Google, organic specifically, is there's going to be quite a large percentage of your traffic that shows up as not provided. Google, unfortunately, recently made an update where if you are logged in to your Gmail account and you're using the Chrome browser, your information is now no longer being passed to anybody. So when you see that not provided, what it means is someone still came in using Google Organic, but their keyword is now being masked to you. One thing we like to see, and why we do recommend using pay-per-click, is that information is not masked. Google actually passes that along as long as you're paying for it. It's probably one of the ways they try to get more people to spend more money in BPC. So the next piece. Oops, too far. Which is behavior. So now we're looking at what are people doing on my site? What are the pages that they're coming in on? What are the pages that they're leaving on? Is the page that they're coming in on the same page as they're leaving on? And is that okay? In some cases, that will be okay. If you have an informational page that is around a specific topic or a specific news article, it might be okay that someone comes in and leaves immediately. But if you're in the donation process and you have everyone leaving your site at a certain step in the donation process, that's probably a sign that there's something wrong with that individual page. Either the page isn't making someone comfortable enough to make that donation or to register for that event or sign up for that newsletter, and there's something being amiss. And this is where analytics gives you that idea that there is something wrong, but analytics won't tell you what to fix. You still need those people behind the scenes that can say, you know what, I was looking at your website and you're asking for credit card information and nothing is secure. This is going to scare people away from your website. And it has nothing to do with what's in analytics. It's more of someone else looking at the page and identifying that need. So this is where analytics can only take you so far, but not take you all the way to the end. This is the most important piece. So this is where 90 Octane likes to start, and this is where I'm going to focus the most of my talking. The conversion. Identify what you want people to do on your website, and that becomes the start of your analytics journey. So if you are a foundation or an organization that looks for donations, make sure that you set up a conversion goal for your donations, whether that's people who land on the thank you page. If you do have a process that's multiple steps, Google does allow you to set up a goal that follows those multiple steps. You can see at which step people are dropping out. We always recommend that everyone start here. What we find is that no one starts here. Everyone starts with, what are the most viewed pages on my website? And what we always tell them is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter unless those pages are the same ones that are driving all your donations or driving all your registrations to your events or to your newsletters. Having a page that gets viewed a lot is great and may help you in the short term, but in the long term, what you're looking for is your ability to help. So it depends on what your foundation is or what your organization does, but you want to make sure that you have these goals set up. So when you're talking about, newsletter signups and donations, you start here because this is where you can identify where they're coming from and where you should invest more. A lot of the times when we're having our conversations with our nonprofit clients, we have an interesting conversation with them because we can say, hey, we know what your donation rate is per your money spent in pay-per-click because we can see it in analytics because we set it up. Another thing that's really nice to set up in analytics, if you can, is the e-commerce piece. So there are many nonprofit vendors out there that help you build websites and they have that e-commerce component. Many of them already have a Google Analytics integration that makes that setup fairly easy. So that is something that if you are working with a vendor who's managing your your donation process, your shopping cart process, ask them about e-commerce, ask them to see if they can set that up for you, because once you get e-commerce data in here, depending on what you have going on, but specifically for AdWords, you can actually look at the return on investment compared to the donation amount within analytics. It's all in a single location for you, so you're no longer having to dig multiple locations and try to tie that data together. And you can get down to the keyword level on it now. So now you can say this keyword not only drives a lot of traffic to my site, but it drives a lot of donations at a really low cost. And is there any way we can invest more into that keyword? So this is the real power, in our opinion, of Google Analytics and where we like to focus. There are many ways to set up this goal. One thing we would warn everybody about is there are 2 reports in Google Analytics that will report different conversion numbers than the rest. Funnel visualization and the goal flow. The reason is those 2 reports are based off of completing all the steps for a conversion rate, while the rest of the Google reporting, when it reports conversion rate, is based off your entire website's traffic and how many people are hitting that final page. So if you have a donation shopping cart process and you go through step 1 through 5, if you go to funnel visualization, it's only going to report on the people who started on step 1 and then got to step 5 using that same 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you look at goal overview and you look at conversion rate, it's going to look at everybody that hit your website and then everybody that hit that final thank you page. So it's a little bit misleading, but it's something to keep an eye on. Another item that's a little bit misleading in analytics is going to be anything that reports on time. So when I went back and I talked about analytics doesn't know what's going on unless that JavaScript fires. So if I come to your website, I can sit on it for about 15 minutes. If I close my browser, I'm considered 0 time on site. It has nothing to do with how much time I actually spent on the site, but because I never took another action that analytics can record, it's actually showing me as 0. What this does is you might have certain pages that have maybe a high bounce rate. If you have a high bounce rate, you notice that your average time on site might be 0.2 seconds. People aren't on your page for 0.2 seconds. What's happening is that none of those people are moving on to another page, and so analytics doesn't know what to record for them, and so it's lowering that average time on page.
Is that the same if they close the tab that they're on?
Yes, so that is the same if they close the tab. If they were to navigate away from your site, anything that the user does to go off your site and not take another interaction or engagement that Google Analytics is tracking actively will count as a 0 time on site.
What if they enter a separate URL into their search bar?
That's fine as long as it's part of the same site. Oh, into the search bar?
Yeah, so if, let's say I'm on my webpage,
Yeah.
domain.com or whatever, and then I'm reading something, and then I go to the bar and I enter enter google.com.
Yep, you're out.
It still shows 0?
Nope, because what Google's doing and what's really important, going back to the tag, is this. So this account number is what Google's using to identify that you own that site. and that it's only feeding in the information from that account number. So if you have multiple accounts for one reason or another, and you're putting them across multiple sites, Google doesn't know that you own all those sites. It's not going to be able to track anything off the site that you own. So yes, if you were to be on the website and then you went into that search bar, and as soon as you left that site, you're considered an exit. You're now out of the site and not part of something analytics is tracking you.
But it tracked me time-wise.
No.
Oh, no, it didn't. It still gave me a 0. So
Yes.
it's the same as closing out my browser.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's true if you were to navigate away and type in a different URL as well. Because the way analytics works and the way kind of JavaScripts work, they have to have something that kicks them off. So that could be even calling the Google API. So there are other ways of tracking with analytics, and one of them is called an event tag. Basically what that does is it calls the API. That's considered an interaction that it can track. If you do that, then yes, it is tracking you. But if none of that activity is occurring, then you're not being tracked at all. So one thing that's kind of interesting, going back to the conversion data that we like to talk about is this concept of assisted. So we all know that majority of the time when someone is going to take an action on their site, they probably come to your site before. And what we like to look at, and this is a little bit tricky and this is kind of new in the world of marketing specifically, is this concept of assisted. So this idea that someone is coming in and they may come in through a paid medium. So they may have seen a banner ad and they may come to the website and they'll hit a few pages and then they leave. Now the interesting thing is Google has now cookied them and they've put that first party cookie on them so they know when they're coming back. So the next time they come back, they might come through an organic search and they might have typed the name of the name of the nonprofit directly. Google's watching that. So they're saying how many people are coming in through organic search. What we can see here is that Google Analytics is showing that organic was 10 of the conversions. Of the 13 occurred on the last click or was the only click. 3 were assisted, which means somewhere down the line, this person was organic, possibly paid, possibly another medium like email, but then they eventually made that donation or they eventually made that action that you want them to take on the website. And that it happened 3 times. Direct was 1, referral was 1, which might kind of lean you to say, hey, maybe we should focus more on organic search because it seems to have a bigger impact, even when it's not the last touch, but it's also might be the first touch or maybe one of the touches in the middle.
Sorry, was it so like organic is just when you type it in, referral would be another website that's non-paid where assisted is paid? Is that the difference between referral and assisted?
No. So all an assisted conversion is it can be any sort of medium whatsoever, but helped make that person or was part of that person's path in engaging with your website before they made whatever conversion you're tracking. So let's say we're tracking donations. A person might get an email and they might hit the website through that email. That's going to be tracked as long as you have the right tracking parameters on all your URLs.
And that would be assisted.
That would be part of that assist. And then what you'll see is organic is more of someone coming in using Google and not clicking on one of the paid links, but clicking on one of the organic listings.
But then referral would be what?
Referral would be a website that you're not advertising with or it's not clear that you're advertising with that's sending traffic over. So if you've got a person on, like blogs are usually identified as referrals. If someone's trying to blog about nonprofits and they happen to link to yours, that link is considered a referral when that person comes through.
So, I'm sorry, for clarification, the assisted is I go to the site through this email, it cookies me, but I leave the site, and then I come back to actually make a donation?
Yeah.
That's the assisted.
Yeah, and so that's what it's tracking is the idea that it's really not the last touch. And where this kind of came from was the idea that if someone think about the way you shop and the way you interact online. If you're searching for something, you might go to Target because you might have seen a banner ad for Target.com and they've got a product that you're interested in. You do your research, you read your reviews, but then you're not ready to buy that day. The next day you come in, you might actually type in Target.com. So before you came in through a search, the next time you're coming in through direct, that search is considered an assist for that direct conversion. You're no longer just tracking what the last event was. You're now looking a couple steps back and seeing what all the engagements were. Are there any other questions? I'm trying to keep this a little bit brief because I know everybody wants to get in the workshop.
When you do a conversion, like we sell all of our tickets and our donations are done through somebody else, tickets.com or a place that collects money for nonprofits. Can you attach a conversion to an offsite link, or does it have to be on your own site?
Yes, you can. So this is one of those things where I was talking about Google will refer to itself as kind of calling the API. But there are tags, I guess, or little pieces of HTML that you can put onto your URLs. Yep. And really what it's called is there's a JavaScript call called onClick. So basically what that's just saying is as soon as someone clicks this, then fire this piece of the tag. And you can do that a couple of ways. You can use an event tag to do that, or you can do a virtual page view. They have their pros and their cons. And if you have any specific questions around that, I can kind of walk you through it today. So as far as resources for Google, unfortunately, Google is not very good at supporting this product. They have nobody you can call unless you're willing to spend about $100,000 or more. So they do have a premium product that does come with support, but they don't actually provide it unless you're willing to pay for it. And I don't believe, as to date, I've heard of any sort of discounts for nonprofits. So I do believe that they think that everyone can pony up the $100,000 a year for that kind of support. But a couple places you can go. The Google Developers Forum is actually pretty good. It's a very active place. There are a lot of people who are posting specific questions, and there are a lot of people replying to those questions. Another thing in general, just Googling it. Go to Google, say, this is my problem. Usually someone else has already had that problem. And they'll have in that forum post and kind of that feedback what to try. Another thing to do is to find a partner. Find someone who kind of lives, breathes this stuff. I didn't really introduce myself. My role at the company is to kind of be that marketing person and then that nerd in the corner that doesn't come out of the dark. So, find a partner that has that, or find somebody in your company who is that. There are a lot of people who are very talented. You want someone that has a little bit of marketing and business sense, and then someone who can understand a little bit about HTML, because implementation of analytics isn't purely on the business side. The implementation piece is a little bit on the technical side.
There's also the Google Analytics Academy now with the little graduation cap on the
Right.
reports if anyone is looking for something specific when they're in a view.
Yeah, one thing we'll probably do when we have sent this to Robbie to send this out is add another slide with some, a list of some of the tools Leslie mentioned, some of the tools Ariana mentioned, maybe even a link to where you guys can go check out the courses that tutorials you can take for Google Analytics and things like that.
Yep. And there are a few, so we'll be able to add those. But there is some people have built some event tag manager tools and some URL builder tools. So URL builder is actually a tool from Google, which if you're doing any sort of paid media that isn't coming from a Google product, that you can add to the end of your URLs, and basically it uses query string parameters. But then all that information will be fed into analytics so that you can identify something as an email instead of just a refer, because by default, Google will identify everything that it doesn't recognize as a refer.
Sam, do you want to go just to the next slide? And we have one more.
There we go.
So I know nobody probably wants to have to quickly write down these big long links, but like I said, we'll send it out. But Leslie had mentioned that we do one of our storytellers put together some content tips for nonprofits and writing landing pages for driving donations that you can check out. And then also, if you want to visit our blog, it's blog.90octane.com. We have a blog on a donor cultivation strategy, so really building those sustainer donors post-holiday season. So you bring in a lot of new donors in terms of acquisition during that time of year, and then what do you do with all of them? So that's an interesting blog to check out as well.
And there's a resource called the Community Course, and you can actually sign up for volunteers that do analytics and that type of thing, and then they can access your site.
Yeah.
it's pretty old school, but there are actually a couple really good books out there. I know. Paper and everything. I actually just wrote a paper on Google Analytics for a grad school program.
Oh, perfect, yeah.
So there's a couple, paper.
Don't look at dummy books. None of
No,
you are
not
dummies. I don't like dummy books. They're written for dummies. Nobody's a dummy. Okay.
So I guess we'll probably take the break quickly, or Robbie, I know we're going a little
Yeah.
ahead. So.
Yes, we're going to probably take a small break. We do have a form kind of review